You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm super excited to introduce you to the colleague of mine, Dr. Kemba L. Marshall. Dr. Kemba Marshall holds a DVM from University of Florida and is boarded through the American Board of Veterinary Practitioners, Avian Specialty. Kemba holds a master's degree in public health from the University of Iowa and is director of veterinary services at the Land O'Lake Purina Animal Nutrition Center. In 2020, Kemba founded Marshall Recruiting Consortium in order to address the lack of diversity in veterinary and agriculture professions. And that is the topic for our discussion today: diversity, equity, and inclusion in veterinary medicine. Kemba, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for finding the time.
Thank you all both for having me. It is my pleasure to be with you today.
So, very, very important and interesting topic, especially these days. What is the platform? What were you trying to achieve? How did you start it? And where are you at today?
Yeah, great questions. Thank you. So, for a lot of us, 2020 was quite a year. Not only did we have, we're all living through a global pandemic, but we're also shut up in our homes, right? So I don't know about you guys, but prior to the pandemic, every week I was on a plane, going here, going there. What time is my flight? When is my connection? All of that stuff. And in 2020, we're at home alone. And the only thing that's constant in our lives is this 24-hour news cycle. So we're seeing images. We've got African-American men, women. We've got Latino men, women being treated in some instances in ways that just were very, very unsettling. And so as all of this is happening for me at work, it's interesting because work, it just is chugging right along. We're talking sales, we're talking marketing, what products are in the marketplace. And quite honestly, it began to feel quite hollow because it was like almost an alternative reality, And for me, it became interesting because when I spoke to one of my coworkers that I was comfortable sharing with, and I said, it is bothersome to me that not one person has asked if I'm okay, if I need anything. And literally that person's response to me is, "Oh, but you're not like those people. You're a doctor and you're here with us." And it was very interesting because I think that person with 100% positive intention meant that, right? But the odd thing is that's not how this works. So like a lot of people, gyms were shut down. I love like really trying to be active. And I was like, well, if I can't go to the gym, there's a sidewalk and I got this dog. And so I guess we'll start walking. And so I promised myself that I was not going to gain those COVID-19 pounds. And so every day that the weather was decent, we walked 5 miles. And I walked when I was angry. I walked when I was confused. I walked when I was hurt. I walked when I was trying to figure it out. And what came to me was that part of the issue is we have so few African Americans that are in the room when business decisions are made. And it's almost that we're in the same country, in the same space, but living in two parallel lives. So I thought, if I've been successful at anything, I've been successful at being able to kind of navigate those spaces of being the only or being the first. And so when I thought about Marshall Recruiting Consortium, it really is designed to bring more diversity into both agriculture and animal health sectors, which still in the US tend to be very, very, very segregated. And so while on its face, it does function like a traditional job board, really at its core, what makes it different is we also are partnering with the employers to ask the question, what is the culture or the environment that any of your associates are operating in? Because quite honestly, to have diversity and still feel excluded doesn't gain anyone anything. So it's really focused on how do we improve the inclusiveness of the environments when we're working.
That's amazing.
It makes a ton of sense to me, and it's really interesting. It's such an interesting topic. And I've just gone through some training in this Google accelerator that my startup company is in. And we had this session. And I'm going to ask you a question that's
Mhm.
directly coming out of that form, which is new knowledge for me,
Mhm.
is why should we care? And what does diversity, inclusion, and equity mean to the workplace? What does it mean to software development? And why
Mhm.
should we care?
Great questions. So, I will say to you that the reason that we should care is no matter what industry you're in, what you're wanting is you're wanting customers to come in and you want them to purchase or utilize products and services. At the end, I mean, a widget is a widget, and we know that there's different products, but without people requesting those products and services, there's no company that's going to have any type of longevity or life. So when you think about how do you address customers, you have to be able to do that in a culturally competent way, because we are well aware the worst thing you can ever do is offend or disappoint or let down a customer. Because with all of our tools and our technology, what still carries the most weight is word of mouth. So if I say, hey, you know what? I went to this place, I got this great thing. It was a great price. When you go, you need this, and I want you to ask for John Doe. I'm going to maybe tell one or two people if I have an amazing experience. If I'm upset, offended, angry, especially in today, I'm on social media and I'm going to say to every single person who knows me, this happened, this was wrong, and I am angry. So when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, if we had to say the one thing that we should all be able to agree on is the business case, then I will say, let us discuss the business case. What I would hope, though, is as individuals, we all know what it is to be excluded. You didn't get picked for the kickball team when you were little. You wanted to play hockey, and they were like, no, you're too little. Get out of here. You can't play hockey. You wanted to ride the ride on the amusement park, and you were too little. You wanted to ride a horse, and someone said, nope, you're not going to be able to ride this horse. Everyone has something that they have wanted to do in their life, and they were prevented from doing it. And everyone knows what it feels like to say, I didn't get picked. I'm not in the group. I didn't get invited to lunch. I didn't get invited to the after meeting. And if you know what that feeling is, then I would say the humanity in all of us, especially today. I mean, people are dying. The humanity in all of us should say, if I as an individual can make it so that someone else does not have to feel excluded because I know what that feels like, it is my human responsibility to make sure that we're doing that for others.
That's so awesome. And it's interesting how you took the angle on the customers, because I'm always passionate about the problems that are, they're soft if you compare like business money, and then there's human problems. And a lot of the times it's hard to connect one to another.
Mhm.
I've been doing a lot of research on burnout in the veterinary domain, and to
Mhm.
me, it's right now, I feel, and that's what I'm dedicating my further career to, is that right now is the time when we can convince the business and say, look, if you don't look into this problem, the business will crumble. So this
Mhm.
is, maybe burnout is this soft thing, like it's a
Mhm.
human thing, but
Mhm.
we're losing vets. They don't want to work for us anymore, and then this needs to be addressed. Same thing here. If you don't address the problem of lack of diversity, but all your customers are whoever comes through the door, you have to have diverse environment to service those customers. So I love that. But starting business in 2020, I mean, how
Mhm.
was that experience? You're at
Yeah.
home, there's not much movement, you're walking your dog.
Yeah.
How did idea come about? How did you, from the veterinarian, from Purina, from all of that, go, I'm going to do this, and the website looks beautiful, UX is amazing. How did you get there?
Thank you. So the journey for me is I am at Land O'Lakes Purina, and I start here with this company in 2016, and I am the first African American person who identifies as female to ever work here in 2016.
Wow.
So that's interesting because when I'm talking to my parents and I'm leaving a major city, Phoenix, Arizona, and I tell them that I'm picking up and moving to Gray Summit, the first thing my parents say to me are, how close is that to the next major city? Because my parents are aware that if I'm going to work in a very small town and I'm driving on a 2-lane highway with no streetlights, there are certain things that may befall persons of color when you're stopped by the police, or if you're living your life, walking my dog, right? So for me, the struggle is, how can we say we want more diversity? We want to break the cycle of being the first or the only. And the way that I thought about it is, while I was walking my dog, I thought, I think like a lot of people, I'm not able, for example, to go participate in a protest. I have animals that must be taken care of. I have a professional license that if I were to be arrested, I jeopardize that license. So I'm not able to do that. As a person, I certainly very often are giving money to causes that I care about. But I think when I want to make the difference, I need to be present. And so, the one thing that 2020 gave me was time to think, time to be quiet. And so it was that thinking and that walking to say, what is something that I am uniquely suited to do that can address part of our challenges with diversity, equity, and inclusion? And for me, it's very personal. And I feel like everything that I've done in my professional life has suited me to be in this point now to say, this is one of the things that we can do, realizing that there are many, many other things that need to be done.
That's a great answer. I think that anybody that's entrepreneurial arrives at a place like that, which is, I've done all of these other things. I've screwed up this thing, or I've learned here, but now I'm ready. And so that's really interesting. And I think it's quite admirable. So at a go. But I've got more stuff that I want to talk about. This topic is super interesting to me, especially coming on the backs of a bunch of learning. And so I think that there is reluctance. There is reluctance to be in inclusive culture in companies in the world, period. Like Canada, US, wherever. It's a real problem. I think part of the solution is the sales job that needs to be done to pull people over to where they should be. And when I say that, the most recent kind of tidbit of knowledge that I've received as a software company, we're building software. We're building software for people. We don't know what those people look like. We don't know where they live. We don't know what they're going to do with our software. But if we build that software as a diverse team, it's a competitive advantage for everybody that's going to use our software. And I think that's part of the sales job. It's like, hey, people, listen, here's a trick to be better at business. You can be more inclusive. You can have a more diverse work staff. And guess what? You're going to outperform the people down the road. And I'd like to just hear your thoughts on that, because I really believe it.
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that I would say is, you're absolutely right, because though you may not know the end user for that software, just walking through it, you know that people are going to be different ages. People are going to have different levels of computer literacy. Look at 2020. Like, I don't know how many of you have older folks, your parents, your grandparents, anyone around you, having them get on a Zoom call, type in the chat. If I would have said that to you in 2019, you're like, no way. But when we're all forced learners, and here's this technology, and this is the only way that we're going to be able to communicate with our family, then that software makes a difference. Where is the chat button? How big is the font? What if I have dyslexia? How do I make it so that no matter where you are, what if I'm having trouble seeing? What if I don't hear? What if I cannot speak? When you think about closed captioning, when you think about the deaf and the hard of hearing, diversity, I think a lot of times people go to, it's racial. This person is of this race and they're not of my race. That is such a narrow, exclusive definition of diversity. Diversity should be everything. So for example, there's a commercial out now for Google, and it's talking about being the child of deaf adults. Powerful commercial, because when you're deaf and you're unable to hear, then me picking up the phone, that's offensive because I'm deaf or I'm hard of hearing. Pick up the phone to do what? So now we need this video. And not only do we need the video, but we need the closed captioning software function that you have to be able to find quickly while you're on the call. I don't want to have you disengage, get off the call, be excluded, go to some manual, go to page 35, find the paragraph where it says closed captioning, because then you've lost the moment. And so when I think about diversity, what I'm very focused on is how do we have environments where everyone feels welcome, no matter your religion, no matter your age, your military service, your physical ability. Are you an individual who utilizes a wheelchair, a walker? Do you need a seeing eye dog? All of these folks still want to be integral parts of society. And so when I think about it, that's the so what for the software engineer who says, I don't know where this is going, but if I don't know where it's going, how can I be thinking more broadly about what the potential users are going to need to be able to do?
So awesome. You reminded me about the previous software product that we've built. So SmartFlow was this whiteboard with the iPad. And it was a very funny moment, which kind of led to this understanding that we need to look differently at UX. So my co-founder he's a classmate of mine from Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we didn't have designer. We're starting. So it was me, sort of the subject matter expert, and him a coder. And then we started, and then one feature came out, and it was color coding different procedures.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came out with horrendous colors. I was like, man, like what happened to you? Like, you can't do that. We found out he was colorblind, and I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, we have to now pay attention, because a lot of guys, like, it's a guy thing to be, predominantly to be colorblind to green and red. So it was interesting sort of angle that you mentioned, and also interesting. My wife's grandpa in Russia. Recently, I found out that he was upset that I went off Facebook because he was I had no idea. 96 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Guys following me on Facebook, and this is how he was getting updates from us from Canada about his grandchildren. So it was just amazing. Kind of came to my mind when you said that. But tell us more about the platform. How does it work? What's so specific about it? How do people find it? Like, who should be looking for it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So if you are a job seeker, you should definitely be looking. It is www.marshallrecruitingconsortium.com, all spelled out. The other thing that I think is interesting is so many veterinarians are burnt out. Maybe they've been in clinical practice and they're like, clinical practice is not for me anymore. Maybe this particular clinical practice is not for them. So when you're thinking about what is my next job, what is my next opportunity, Marshall Recruiting Consortium is here to meet you, to say, you know what, there are universities that need professors. We're literally training dogs to sniff out COVID-19 infection. Veterinarians should be a part of all of that. If you're an employer and you're like, I want to go beyond the statement that says we want to, be more invested in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I need somewhere to start, Marshall Recruiting Consortium is also for you, because it's a blend of not only are we bringing to you diverse top talent, but we're also having those practical logistical considerations. Now that you've invited folks into your space, how do you make sure they're comfortable and feel welcome?
That's awesome. And that really sort of helps with, the topic that I'm passionate about, because I'm, one of the things that I'm more and more seeing in veterinarians that are burned out, we take care about the after effects, when they're burned out, wellness, work-life balance. That's the band-aid after. What I'm convinced, and I'm trying to prove this hypothesis, is that veterinarians expire on certain goals that they set. So you became a veterinarian and you're it now, and now you're 9 to 5 showing up. It's good for about 10 years, I found, for me. And then after that, I ran out of goals. And I think that veterinarians and technicians need to see what can I use from the past to move forward and how to connect those creative ideas. I'm going through this training in flow state, and one of the best things you could do to actually connect creative ideas is walks, disconnect from everything what's going on. And that's probably how that idea came to your head when you were walking your dog. And then you kind of started getting dopamine and kind of brainstorming, and eventually came to the realization. So, but what's great about it is that you're bringing new job opportunities to people that are burned out or about to be burned out in our domain. So I think that's fantastic. And I think that if anybody wants to check it out, definitely recommend that.
Kemba, like I said, I think this is a really important topic. And I just wanted to give you a form to speak to our audience. We've had thousands of downloads every single month. Like, speak to our audience and tell them why they need to care, whether it's hiring people for their veterinary practice or, building their software or their companies. Like, just again, like, here's the form. Speak to our audience and tell them, maybe not just why they should care, but like what's a good first step that they can do, because I believe that the work that you're doing and your suggestions are actually going to help improve the world.
Yeah, thank you. So, for anyone, if you're an employer or if you're a job seeker, what we all realize is that what gives us fulfillment in our jobs, often it's not the money when you hear people say why they left. A lot of times it's work life balance, and it's also the impact that you're able to make. And so, what I would challenge everyone to say is before you get to the point where you're angry, you're frustrated, give yourself the grace and the time to say, what else is out there? Yes, I'm a practicing veterinarian, or yes, I work in this laboratory. What else is possible? This is when you should be looking to find those jobs. And then there's no harm to look, there's no harm to apply, there's no harm to do the interview. What's the downside? You say, oh, I'm not interested in the opportunity. Fine. What's the upside, though? The upside is what I think we can all agree on. So if it's a new opportunity, if it's coming up to an individual, we're in so many virtual meetings where we've got these breakout rooms. Is it going, typing in that chat to an individual to say, hey, I'm having, a really good dialogue with you. Can we connect later? Because the more broadly you can approach your work-life balance, how many friends do you have? What do you talk about? What do your friends bring to you that you don't already know in terms of cultural competency? Then all of us can be better about putting products and services into the marketplace that are more culturally competent. And also, like begets like. So when you start putting yourself in that place where you're curious, you're open, you have respectful questions, people will come and you will have the dialogue, and you'll get out of kind of checking the box for the metrics to say, are we diverse, equitable, and inclusive? And you'll just find that you say, well, wait a minute. I have friends. My friends are not from the US. My friends are not male. My friends are not female. My friends identify differently. I want to create spaces for my friends. And when I think about my friends, it urges me forward to say, think more broadly about what Marshall Recruiting Consortium is, because I want it to be the table where all of my friends feel welcome.
Amen.
I love it. That's really great. Kemba, thanks so much for this. I think it's a really important topic, and I wish you the best of luck. We like to wrap up every episode in the same way. So we've got a couple of questions for you. So a book, a TED Talk, something that's inspired you. I mean, you might have something, I'm not sure, but what would you recommend our guests check out?
Michelle Obama Becoming. It's great. Number one, the title says so much. I mean, this is a former first lady who writes a book in the active verb becoming, which means she's not done. And if she's a former first lady, we can't be done, right? So the more curious, the more open you are, that's great. So Becoming is Michelle Obama. I would recommend that.
That's awesome. I heard her speak at HubSpot conference. It was in Boston 3 years ago. She's amazing. That was really
phenomenal.
Cool.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
And so the last question, and the one of the last two that we usually ask, is there anyone else in the industry that you think would be valuable to invite to this podcast?
Yes, definitely. So, as I spoke to you guys about, I do a lot in the large animal field, but laboratory animal medicine, when you think about messenger RNA and vaccines, these are, again, now kitchen table topics. And I think about Dr. Donna Jarrell, who is leading the Lab Animal Veterinary Group right now as its national president. And I think, if you have any interest in lab animal medicine, more about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what are other ways that we can look at it, the Lab Animal Medicine Group is a great place to start with Dr. Donna.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.